Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Beitzah Daf Dalid begins with a brief description of a machlokes, about a machlokes, concerning the topic of things being batel, things being nullified, if they are a miyut, if they're a minority of a mixture, and when something is too chashav to be batel. We have a machlokes tanaim and another machlokes tanaim, what that machlokes tanaim was. This is a Gemara's conclusion to a discussion about what's batel and what's not batel. Then the Gemara will return at length to the question of an egg that was born on Yom Tov, and the Gemara will discuss some sources as to what the reason might be that it's aser. We've already seen 4 opinions of the Amoraim. The Gemara will make some assumptions and discuss details about the halacha. And then the Gemara will bring a list of comparable cases and machlokes about these other cases. So let's begin. First of all, we're discussing the topic of something being batel if it's in a mixture. And the Gemara has just said that there's a Tana that holds that most things that are significant, that are an important unit, are not batel in a mixture. If they're mixed into a majority of other things, they're still significant and they're too important, and therefore they're not batel. The Gemara quotes the Tana here, and there we have a machlokes tanoim between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, and we have a machlokes amiroim between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. What exactly was that machlokes tanoim? The case is discussing somebody who made a cake of pressed figs. That's what we call an eagle dvela. Now Rashi explains that the way these things were made was they took the figs, and there was a special tool that they used to cut out the stem and the pit of the figs. And then they took those destemmed figs and they pressed them together in a kli, in a device called an eagle, which was a circular device, and they pressed them in there and it became a cake, almost like a block of cheese. And then they took that and they hardened it and they sold it in that form. Now, this person went and he made a bunch of these blocks, but he put them in other round devices, not necessarily in an eagle. He put maybe in a barrel or in a basket, and he made these round pressed cakes of de-stemmed and de-pitted figs. The issue here is what happened was that he pressed the figs together in the mouth of the kli, and there were many other figs and the cakes of pressed figs below it in the kli. So there's 2 versions as to how this machlokes works. According to the first version, which is Rabbi Meir's version, what happened was that the question of the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is, if I know that I put a cake of pressed figs in the mouth of a kli, and that cake was truma, and now I have a whole bunch of other kalim with pressed figs in the mouth of the kli, and those are not truma, and I don't know which one is my truma figs. What can be combined to count against my truma figs for bittul? The shear for bittul is 100, is 100 to 1. So I need 101 cakes of pressed figs. Can I count only the mouth of the kli, the pressed figs that's in the mouth of the kli? Because I know that my truma was in the mouth of the kli. And I know that what's in the rest of the kli was definitely not my truma. So do I say that what's in the rest of the kli is not in the suffix, and therefore it does not count to be mevatel, my cake of pressed truma figs which is in the mouth of the kli? Or can I count everything? What's in the kli, what's in the mouth of the kli, all of it can count to the shear of a total of 100 times as much as the pressed figs. So the Gemara says that according to Rabbi Meir, that's the machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer says I can count everything else that's in the kli, even though it doesn't make sense. What's the rest that's not in the kli is not part of the suffix. It's for sure not that cake of pressed figs that was a truma, so it shouldn't be included. But since truma of fruit is only a derabanan, therefore we're lenient in an issue of a derabanan. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Rabbi Yeshua says you can only count the mouth of the kli, you can't count anything else. Now, again, that's Rabbi Meir's version. Rabbi Yehuda's version is different. Rabbi Yehuda's version is that nobody says you can count what's in the kli. That's definitely not an option. The question is there bittul at all? According to Rabbi Yeshua, there is bittul, and therefore if you have 100 times as much as the kli, as what was in as the cake of pressed figs of a truma, you can consider it to be batel, counting only the mouth of the kli. Now, according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's no bittul. This thing is not batel at all because a whole cake of pressed figs is chashav, and therefore it's too significant, and therefore it's not batel. Even if you have 300 times as much, he says it's not batel. Now, says the Gemara, where does Rabbi Eliezer agree? He agrees if you did not have an entire cake of pressed figs filling the mouth of the kli. It was mixed up, it was chopped up, it was mixed up, it was somewhere around the kli, the north of the kli, the south of the kli. It wasn't in a specific location. It was somewhere mixed. Those truma figs were mixed into the other figs in the kli. There you don't have a solid unit that's chashav, and therefore it's batal. Okay, that's that Gemara's discussion. Now the Gemara refers back to the Beitzah which started this whole thing, which is where we had seen that an egg, that suffix iser, is not batel, and if it's a suffix, it's aser. So we wanted to know, what is this egg a suffix iser for? And we were assuming that it's because it was born on Yom Tov. And the Gemara said that according to some of the opinions which we saw as to why an egg that's born on Yom Tov is aser, it's only an iser d'Rabbanan. So the question was, why is it not batel, and why is it that it is aser even if it's just a suffix? Usually a suffix d'Rabbanan is mutter. So the Gemara now quotes another explanation. That's Rav Ashi. And Rav Ashi says it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. This egg, even if it was aser, even if it was born on Yom Tov, again, we're not sure if this is an egg that was born on Yom Tov or not, it's a suffix, but even if it is, it's mutter after Yom Tov, so it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. It becomes totally mutter at some point. The halacha is a davar sheyesh lo matirin, something which is going to become mutter at some point. You cannot eat it using bittul, and you cannot eat it using suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. You have to wait until it becomes a mutter. Both of those leniencies don't apply if you could just wait a little bit. And therefore, even though it's d'Rabbanan, it's aser now, and even though it's d'Rabbanan, it's mixed into other things, it's not batel. Okay, now, on the topic of eggs that were born on Yom Tov, going back to that subject, the Gemara now quotes a Beitzah, which it has a question that it does not fit with one of the approaches, at least, as to why an egg born on Yom Tov is aser. The Beitzah is acherim, saying the name of Rabbi Eliezer, that an egg born on Yom Tov, you could eat the egg and its mother. So Gemara says, eat the egg and its mother. What is this talking about? So the Gemara is going to focus on the opinion of Rav Nachman. Now, the problem with the egg is that it's muktzah. So now, if its mother was a chicken that's set aside for being eaten, so then it makes sense to say you eat the egg and its mother, but then it's no chiddush. Of course you could eat the egg and its mother. Nobody's muktzah. It's all food. The mother is food. The egg is food. You could eat them all. What's the problem? If it's talking about an egg which was an egg-laying chicken, a chicken which is an egg-laying hen, it was set aside for laying eggs, it was not meant to be eaten, so then the halacha said it's muktzah. Rabbi Eliezer is the one who's quoted here, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. You can't change functions of something on Yom Tov and consider it not a muktzah. It is muktzah, and therefore the egg is muktzah, and its mother's muktzah. You can't eat either of them. So how can we say you could eat the egg and the chicken? So what's going on over here? What is the Chayrim saying? You could eat the egg and the chicken. So Gemara gives two answers. Abaye says the answer is that we're referring to it. We don't know what the mother was for. It was bought without any intent described. It was just bought, and we don't know. Is it meant to be eaten, or is it meant to be raising eggs? So therefore we say if you're going to eat the mother, so that shows that it was meant for eating. And then the egg is not muktzah either. So eat the mother, then you can eat the egg. That's Abaye's approach. Gemara gives another approach, which is Rav Murray. He says that this is just an exaggeration. This is a very emphatic way of stating that the egg is mutter. We mean to say the egg is so mutter, you can eat the egg and you can eat its mother. But it's not really saying you can eat the mother. Can't actually eat the mother, it's just an exaggeration. Now you find a similar thing in another Beitzah, which quotes a Chayrim in the name of Rabbi Eliezer again. And there it has to be an exaggeration, and therefore that's going to support this contention that this is an exaggeration as well. What's that case? Over there the Beitzah says that Chayrim, so the name of Rabbi Eliezer, an egg, you could eat it, its mother, the chick, and the shell. Somebody says chick and the shell. What are you talking about, chick and the shell? You mean the shell itself? You could eat a chick and a shell? A shell's not food. You're not going to eat a shell. The only thing it could possibly mean is you could eat the chick in the shell, but that doesn't make sense either, because you can't eat a chick in a shell. A chick in a shell is usher. It's called sharetz leif, and it's usher to eat. There's a machlokes, and once it's hatched and its eyes are still closed, there you have a machlokes between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, the chachamim, be allowed to eat it. Then if still in the shell, a chick that's not hatched, you're definitely not allowed to eat that. So it must be that when we're saying you eat the chick in the shell, it's just an exaggeration. We're just speaking in a very confident, outlandish way, but we're not actually saying that you're allowed to eat that at all. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to similar cases to an egg that's born on Yom Tov. The Gemara discusses if you have Shabbos and Yom Tov together, one following the other, an egg that's born on one of those days, let's say Shabbos, could you eat it on Yom Tov? An egg that's born on Yom Tov, you eat it on Shabbos. We're assuming now, like we said in the Mishnah, going like Beis Hillel, an egg that's born on a certain day, you cannot eat it on that day itself. The question is, can you eat it the next day if that's a different thing, Shabbos or Yom Tov? So Gemara says, Rav says no, you're not allowed to, and Rav Yechon says it's mutter, you are allowed to. So Gemara says, what's this machlokas about? Maybe Rav says it's also because he holds Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's called kedusha achas. It's called one period of kedusha. It's all together one kedusha. So Gemara says that can't be, because Rav clearly holds that it's not kedusha achas. We have a Gemara in Erevin where somebody wants to make an Erev Tchumen, so he should be able to walk outside his Erev. So Rav says, like the Arba Zekanim, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you make 2 different Tchumen for the 2 different days. One for Shabbos, one for Yom Tov. It's considered different Kedusha, it has different rules. So Gemara says, the Machlokes is about the concept of Hachana D'Rabba. Hachana D'Rabba is the idea that when the Torah says that your food has to be ready, has to be prepared, set aside, and identified as your food from before Yom Tov and from before Shabbos, before the day of Kedusha. Hachana D'Rabba says that even if it's being created min hashamayim, it's being born, it also has to be finished and complete before your Kedusha begins. So that's a concept of Hachana D'Rabba. That concept says that that to eat it on the second day of a Shabbos Yom Tov, whatever it is, it has to be already ready and born the day before Shabbos, the last weekday. So if it's born on Shabbos, you cannot eat it as long as it's Shabbos and as long as the Yom Tov that follows. If it's born on Yom Tov, you cannot eat it on Yom Tov or the Shabbos that follows. The question is, do we hold of Hachana D'Rabba or not? The Rav holds of Hachana D'Rabba, and Rav Yechon does not hold of Hachana D'Rabba, does not hold of this idea that the egg, which is created min hashamayim, has to be born. He holds people have to prepare what they have to prepare. There's no rule that min hashamayim has to be prepared as well. Gemara now says this concept is a machlokes tanaim. We have a Beitzah that says that an egg which was born on Shabbos, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could eat it on the Yom Tov that follows. If it's born on Yom Tov, you could eat it on the Shabbos that follows. According to Rabbi Eliezer, this goes into the machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, which you hold like Beis Hillel, that it is aser. The Gemara now quotes 2 incidents which is supposed to help us try to figure out what the halacha is here, like Rav or like Rabbi Yechanan. Gemara says that Rav Ava was staying in someone's house, and that person had an egg that was born on Yom Tov that was a day before Shabbos. He came and asked him, listen, am I allowed to roast this egg on Yom Tov so that I'll be able to eat it on a Shabbos? So the person said to him, I see, you're assuming that the halacha is like Rav Yechanan, because usually when it's Rav against Rav Yechanan, the halacha is like Rav Yechanan, and therefore it's also to eat on today. It's also to eat on Yom Tov. Your question is, could you roast it today so that you could eat it tomorrow on Shabbos? But the answer is no, because the reason it's also to eat today is because it's muktzah. And it's muktzah, you're not allowed to do anything with it. Tomorrow you'll be able to eat it raw, but you won't be able to roast it, of course, because it'll be Shabbos. But you're not allowed to do anything with it today, it's muktzah. So this story seems to indicate that the halacha is like Rav Yechanan. Gemara brings a Beitzah now that supports that as well, and it says that an egg that's born on Shabbos and an egg that's born on Yom Tov is muktzah. You're not allowed to do anything with it. You're not allowed to use it as a bottle stopper. You're not allowed to use it to hold up the bed. Now, similar story was that Rav Papa was staying in someone's house, or according to a different version, somebody just came to him. It wasn't that his host, and he had an egg that was born on Shabbos that was the day before Yom Tov. And he said, am I allowed to eat it on Yom Tov tomorrow? Am I allowed to eat it tomorrow night? So meaning he was asking us halacha like Rav or like Rabbi Yechanan. So he said, go now, come back tomorrow. I don't paskin anything after the Suda. After the Suda, I drank a little alcohol. The halacha is not allowed to paskin when you have alcohol in the system. So come back, ask me tomorrow. So the next day he came back and he said, listen, I don't know what I told you yesterday, but it's a good thing, because if you would have asked me and I would have had to answer you, I may have said the halacha is like Rav Yechanan, because Rav against Rav Yechanan, the halacha is always like Rav Yechanan. But now that I'm sobered up, I remember that there are 3 exceptions to that, and those are 3 exceptions about eggs. And this is one of them. The other 2 we'll see later on the daf. In some Rav is l'kula, and some Rav is l'chumra. In all these 3 cases, the halacha is like Rav over Rav Yechanan. Therefore, the halacha here is like Rav, that it is aser. Now, Rav Yechanan said it's mutter. It's mutter. An egg which is born on Shabbos or Yom Tov, it's mutter to use the next day. So Gemara now quotes a similar case where Rav Yechanan doesn't say it's mutter, he says it's aser. That's a case of branches that fell off a tree. It fell off a tree on Shabbos. So the question is, are you allowed to use them for firewood on Yom Tov? Yom Tov, you're allowed to light a fire. You're not allowed to strike a match, but you're allowed to put things in a fire. So here you're allowed to use it the next. You're not allowed to use it the next day. The Shiloh is, are you allowed to? And Rav Yechon says no. It's usher to use it the next day, even though it's Yontif. The reason is because it fell off a tree on Shabbos today. So Gemara says Rav Yechon had said that, and he said, "Don't ask me that. Why is it different than an egg? An egg which is born on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat the next day on Yontif, according to Rav Yechon. But a branch which fell off a tree, you're not. Both are very similar. Both became into existence, became detached." Became available for use on Shabbos. But if it's an egg, he says you're allowed to eat it the next day. And if it's a branch, you're not allowed to eat it the next day. He says the reason is very simple. In the case of the branch, there's a potential calamity that'll happen if we allow it. And that's that people will think, let's see, this branch, I'm allowed to use it on Yontif. Why was I not allowed to use it yesterday, which was Shabbos? Because you're not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos. You're not allowed to put wood in the fire on Shabbos, obviously. But had it been Yontif and Yontif, I would be allowed to. So let's say another branch falls off the tree today on Yontif. They'll use it today, but that's not true. That's muktzah. So therefore a potential mistake will happen. As far as the egg, people will say, how come I didn't eat the egg yesterday? How come I only ate it on Yontif today? Because it's not mutter the day that it's born. It's only mutter the next day. People will realize, because the egg I could have eaten yesterday. I could have eaten it raw yesterday. There's no reason I didn't eat it yesterday. Therefore, there's no gzera. We're allowed to let you eat it the next day. That's not a problem. The Gemara now discusses another very similar case, and that is branches which fell off a tree and you want to use them for firewood. If they fell off a tree on Yom Tov, it's very similar to an egg which was born from a chicken on Yom Tov. It is something that became useful by detaching from its original attachment source on Yom Tov. Now, the branches are muktzah, but if they fell directly into a stove, so Rav Masa says you could use them, you could light them on fire. So in order to do that, though, he says you have to add a lot of other wood on top of it. So the Gemara says, but what do you mean when you mix around the fire, when you stoke the fire, you'll be moving around the muktzah? So the Gemara says because they're batal, because you have a majority of non-muktzah wood, and they're batal, you don't need to worry about it. The Gemara says they're batal, very funny. They're batal because you made them batal. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to add heter to isser and then say, oh, it's batal now. It's called mevatel and isser l'chatchila. The halacha is that you're not allowed to be mevatel things on purpose and then claim that you're allowed to use it because it's batal. We don't let you do that. So Gemara answers that's on a deraisa. That's an isser deraisa. Muktzah is an isser derabanan. We allow you to do that. So Gemara says, but according to Rav Ashi, who said earlier that anything which is a davar sheyesh l'matirin, anything which has a permitted time coming up soon, like this, which will be permitted after Yom Tov, so Rav Ashi said you don't have any leniencies based on the fact that it is derabanan. It's not batel, and you don't say safek derabanan l'kula. So you shouldn't say here also you should have the leniency of mevatel and isur l'chatchila. You should not have that leniency. You should not be able to use that, and therefore you shouldn't be able to be mevatel isur l'chatchila according to him. So it says here you have another leniency, and that's by the time the thing is used, it's destroyed. The branches are burned up. You don't have used branches around. The use of them destroys them, and that's another leniency. You're destroying the object, not using the object, and therefore it's not really called a violation of muktzah. The Gemara now quotes the other two machlokas that Rav had on the topic of eggs that were born from one day to the next. The first one is 2 days Yom Tov, where one of the days is Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golias. The 2 days Yom Tov which you only have in Chutz La'aretz because of Sveika Diyoma, we're not sure which is the day of Yom Tov. So if it's born on one of those days, can you eat it the next day? If it's born on the first day, can you eat it the second day? So Rav says yes, you're allowed to, because only one of them is Yontif, and therefore the egg is mutter either way. If the day it was born is Yontif, then the day you're eating it now is already after Yontif, so it's mutter. And if the day that it was born is Chol, so it was born during the weekday, no problem. Ravasi disagrees. Ravasi says it's Aser. Now Ravasi obviously holds it's Kedusha Achas. It's not that we're not sure which day is which. We've created 2 days Yontif. It's a new creation. They're both considered Vadai Yontif. It was made because of Sveika Diyoma, but it's not considered like we're not sure which day is which. So Gemara says, is it true that Ravasi holds that way? How can you say Ravasi holds that way? Ravasi used to make Havdalah at the end of the first day, and he would say, Amavdul ben Kodesh l'chol, because obviously he held that the first day Yontif may be the correct day, and it's over. You have to do Havdalah. So he did not hold that it's 2 full days of Yontif. Gemara says Ravasi was mistapik. He wasn't sure, and therefore he wanted the Chumrah both ways. He said it's usher to eat from one day to the next. Maybe it's 1 full Kedusha, 1 2-day Kedusha, but he made Havdalah just in case it's only 1 day Kedusha. So now the Gemara wants to say, who's the halacha like? So Rabbi Zera says it's logical like Ravasi, because if you look, today we already know that there's only 1 a day. We know which is the day. We have a calendar set up. We know what the day of Yom Tov is. There's no suffix anymore, yet we're still keeping 2 days. Obviously, it's a full 2-day Kedusha that was created by the Chachamim, like Ravasi. Abai says, no, it's logical like Rav, because if you look in Eretz Yisrael, they don't keep 2 days. They used to send messengers with fires. The only reason that they stopped was because of the kusim that were interfering. When they sent messengers with fires, they used to hold up a fire on the mountaintops, and they would send a signal like this from one mountain to another very quickly, and everybody knew when Rosh Chodesh was. In those days, they did not keep 2 days. And if those days will come back, we'll be able to rely on it. We'll stop keeping 2 days. The only reason that we keep 2 days now is because minig avosenu b'yadenu is a rule. We don't stop a minute that we already had just in case something happens. People forget how to learn, and therefore they won't have the halachos anymore. We just keep minhagim. But it's really not two kedushas. It's really a suffix which day is which, and therefore it's logical, like Rav, that only one of them is Yontif really, and therefore an egg that's born on one day you can eat on the other day. Now, the next discussion is about 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is slightly different. There, they didn't make 2 days because they weren't sure which day is which. They made 2 days out of a takana. So there, it's Rav and Shmuel who both say the egg that's born on one day is usher on the other day. Now, the way that things worked was as follows. Rosh Hashanah is the day after Elul. Elul could have 29 days, and the 30th day is Rosh Hashanah. Or Elul could have 30 days, and the 31st day is Rosh Hashanah. The problem was when Eidim came in the middle of the day on the 30th day and said, today is Rosh Hashanah. Now, if they came in the morning, it's not a problem, because what went wrong, we kept Yontif. We weren't sure what to do. We kept Yontif. And the Leviim said the Shira on the Karban Talmud Shel Shachris, they said the Yontif Shachal. They said the Shira Shachal. As a matter of fact, even if they knew that it was Yontif already, because Eidim came before the Karban Talmud, they always said the Shira Shachal. That was the set Shira for the first day of Rosh Hashanah, was the usual Shira Shachal. The problem was the Shira that the Leviim said in the afternoon Karban Talmud, that was different for Chol or Rosh Hashanah. And that was because usually the Eidim, if they were coming, came before Mincha. But sometimes what happened that they came after Mincha. And then they said, okay, today is now Rosh Hashanah. And they had already brought the Karban Talmud in the afternoon and said the wrong Shira. So people got messed up. They started keeping Yontif. Clearly from then, they didn't have a Shaila anymore, but they got messed up. So therefore they instituted that from now on, they are not going to take any more Eidim after Mincha time. Once it's time to bring the Karban Talmud Mincha, even if Eidim come, they're not going to accept them. However, if Eidim did come, they started keeping Yontif. They didn't declare it as Rosh Chodesh, they didn't declare it as Rosh Hashanah, they left it for tomorrow, but they did start keeping Hilchos Yontif because they did know that it was Mincha, that the Eidim had come. They did not pronounce Rosh Hashanah, but they did keep Hilchos Yontif. In order to keep that, everybody outside the Beis HaMikdash who would not hear any proclamation, they had to keep Yontif every single year on the first day because they didn't know when Eidim would come after Mincha or not. And therefore it was established that both days would be considered Rosh Hashanah whether Eidim came or not, because they had to accept the Eidim, because they had to keep Yontif even if they didn't accept Eidim, because they could not make a proclamation to turn it into Rosh Hashanah.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.